Throughout this semester, we have been exploring educational films that have been produced in the United States. Our group, which includes Chris Herpecki, Tien, Kiki Griffin, and Jerry Scott, is going to broaden our lens to compare how American educational films differ from French films. Let's take a look into the French cinema. Today, we're going to take a look at 3 French films, The Class, Peppermint Soda, and Wild Reeds, and compare them to American cinema. The Class is about the resilience of teachers who try hard to get their students on track. Parent conferences are required for all students, regardless of their academic standing. In addition, teachers use a variety of methods to engage the entire class and to encourage students to get to know one another, especially because there are many different ethnic backgrounds represented. Throughout the film, we see students who don't understand Mr. Bigadoo and are constantly disrespectful in the classroom. With films like Stand and Deliver, Teachers, and Blackboard Jungle, we see teachers who try their hardest to get their students to enjoy learning and really apply themselves. Peppermint Soda is a film that is much different from The Class. 2 teenage sisters, Anne and Frederique, are living in Paris during the year of 1963, which is the year after the Algerian War, when Algeria gained its independence from France. Many of their misadventures center around what it means to be a teenager, dealing with parental divorce, bad grades, forbidden stockings, a strict schooling system, and even first loves. It pictures the life of an adolescent with great focus and emphasis on teenage sexual experimentation and desires, and how it fits into their absurd, oppressive, and conservative environment. Unlike American films, Peppermint Soda is much more explicit about the political aspects during its time. But in school and at home, discussing politics was not acceptable because it was seen as a threat to the school and to society. Also, the classroom setup in Peppermint Soda is much different than the setup in American films. In the film Wild Reeds, the main emphasis is on the tender and turbulent friendship between Francois and Serge, but it is a mate who remains the emotional center of the film. She is wise beyond her years, uninterested in sex, and accepts Francois' homosexuality. A bizarre love triangle soon forms between Francois, his best friend mate, and Serge. This explicitly erotic relationship between these youngsters and the tumult of self-discovery that comes at the crossroads between youth and adulthood parallels the French-Algerian War raging in the background. In several moments, there is a near-hysterical use of camera movement, representing the whirlwind emotional flux of the young teenage characters, which explores the excruciatingly lonely and painful experiences of discovering you're gay. The American film often portrays adolescents as seeking either expressive or utilitarian individualism, depending on their socioeconomic status. These students, in short, lack balance in their lives. In the suburban genre, middle-class youths seek expressive individualism outside the confines of the school. In the urban subgenre, working-poor students are pushed by the teacher hero to achieve utilitarian individualism strictly through academic focus. In contrast, the French school film tends to portray students who are more well-rounded and balanced. In Wild Reeds, for instance, Francois, mate, and Serge become expressive individualism as they experiment with their sexual and social lives. However, they simultaneously remain academically focused, constantly worrying about their performance on their final exams. Now that we have briefly described 3 French films, let's discuss some of the elements that are not shared with American films. While the ending of American films tend to resolve the conflict presented earlier in the film and ends on a happy tone, French films are much different. The viewer of the French school film has a much more difficult time predicting how the postscript of these films might be written. Another element that makes French films different is the explicit discussion about politics. As mentioned earlier, Peppermint Soda explores the frustrations of 2 Jewish teenagers during the Algerian War. Frederique, who is older sister of the 2, is much more outgoing and starts to become more politically involved. Similarly, in Wild Reeds, the horrors of the Algerian War crash headlong into these young friends, permeating and influencing their lives. French films are also much more explicit in exploring teenage sexuality on screen, while sexuality is present but not discussed in American films. Homosexuality is a much more common and accepted theme in Peppermint Soda and Wild Reeds. Sexual experimentation is universal among adolescents from all cultures. However, the American film tends to withhold any explicitly sexual scenes from the screen. In the French film, however, this rhetoric of sexual condemnation becomes undermined by a rhetoric of tolerance and acceptance.
Created using Powtoon.